Hello and welcome back to another episode of Therapy on Tap. In today's episode, I want to talk about how to get out of your goddamn head. Okay, if you're like anybody else in the world, you spend a lot of time in there. You spend a lot of time in your head, you spend a lot of time in your thoughts, and it's very hard to get out of your thoughts once you get in there. And the reason for this is that when we get anxious and we start to worry about something, our body is uncomfortable and we want to escape that feeling. We don't want to feel uncomfortable and we want to find a solution to whatever the thing is that we're worried about. We want to find an escape route. We want to find an answer so that we don't have to feel that anymore, right? We think, okay, if I solve the problem, then I won't think about it anymore. There won't be anything to think about anymore, and then I'll feel better. But the problem is that when you're anxious, you cannot think clearly, okay? Your cognitive part of your brain shuts down. You're not thinking as level-headed. So when you try to go to your thoughts, even when you find a solution that seems quote unquote reasonable, you will always turn back to finding something bad that could happen, right? And this is one of my problems with the CBT model of therapy, is the idea that you can just challenge your thoughts. Yes, sometimes you can challenge your thoughts, but if you're this anxious and you're this stuck in your head, you cannot just challenge your thoughts. Because if you try to challenge your thoughts, right? If I'm about to get on an airplane and I have a fear of getting on airplanes, and I think to myself, oh my God, what if this airplane goes down? And then I think of a rational thought, quote unquote rational thought, and I say, well, what's the odds of this airplane going down? It's like 1 in a billion, right? So I'll be fine. And then there's that one sneaky little thought in the back that says, what? That you could be that one. You could be that 1 in a billion that goes down, right? So anyone who's struggled with rumination before knows this experience. You feel like you find rational thoughts, you try to integrate them into your thought process, and it doesn't go anywhere, right? Your brain finds another reason to get nervous, and then you worry about that. So how do we get out of it? What we have to realize is that your attempts to find answers to your anxiety are all going to be fruitless. You cannot find an answer to your anxiety. You have to realize that trying to find an answer, that is all a scam. You're not going to find an answer to your solution that's going to be satisfactory, okay? Because when you're in that state of anxiety, no answer will suffice. You're looking for answers, you're looking for resolution, you will not find it, okay? And if you've dealt with this before, you probably know that, right? I mean, you've gone through this enough times to know that I can just keep thinking in circles and circles and it never ends. So we really have to embody that idea. We have to really take that in. When you notice that your thoughts start to come up and you're starting to solve a problem, and look, obviously there are times for solving problems, but if you've been thinking about the same thing for like multiple hours or multiple days even, and you haven't found a solution that is good enough for you, then we're at the point of rumination. We're not in problem solving mode. We're at replaying and replaying and replaying. Okay. So forget about problem solving. There's a time for problem solving, but if you're thinking about the same thing and you can't come up with an answer either because there isn't a good answer or it's not in your control, and so there's no answer you could find anyway, then you have to realize, okay, I am just ruminating. This isn't helping me. This isn't problem solving. I have to turn away from that. That doesn't mean you just make the thoughts magically stop, but we have to have a mechanism within us that says, okay, I need to start to shift my direction somewhere else, because the thoughts, that's not where I should be. And this is the tricky part, is because the thoughts are this thing that seems scary, we assume that that's what we have to solve. We have to solve the thought problem. We don't have to solve the thought problem. What we need to do is redirect ourselves to something else, okay? And no, that doesn't mean distraction. It means practicing other ways of being. Okay, so what are those other ways of being? Well, if we think about when we're anxious, when are we anxious? We're typically anxious when we're thinking about something that is in the future, right? Sometimes when we're thinking about something in the past, maybe something that was embarrassing or something like that, but usually we're thinking about something that has not happened yet, which means that our state of being, in a sense, is in the future. It isn't in the present, and that is where we need to be. Because when we're not anxious, if you think about times in your life when you're not anxious, where is your focus? Your focus is on what you're doing now. And so if you can get really engrossed in something, you can't worry about something, right? If you're doing a task that's really engaging, you can't worry about something because you're too busy focusing on the thing at hand. The problem is that sometimes we don't have something to do, or we don't have something that's going to be so engrossing that we're going to get lost in. TV can only take you so far. Eventually, you might lose interest and you're going to start thinking again. So we can't always rely on external distractions, but what we can rely on is our experience. One way to look at the world is through thoughts. Another way to look at the world is through our emotions. Okay. And so if you're in your head, and this, I notice this a lot with people who are very heady, is they don't even realize how anxious they are. When you ask them to describe their physical symptoms, they often have a hard time doing that because they don't notice it, because they're not there. And what's happening is they get uncomfortable, but they don't like to feel uncomfortable for very long. So then they go to their head and they think, again, I'll solve this problem, then I won't have to worry about it anymore, and then I'll feel relaxed. But instead, what we need to do is we need to learn how to be a little bit uncomfortable. We need to learn how to sit with that uncomfortable feeling and just say, this is anxiety. This really sucks. But you know what? I need to get used to this, because every time I feel this, I run to my thoughts. I try to figure it out. I can't find an answer. And then I just keep spinning my wheels. So take a moment, be with yourself. Let yourself be a little uncomfortable. If you're starting to worry about something, especially if it's something out of your control, right? If it's something in your control, then you can go do something about it. But a lot of things we worry about are out of our control. And if it's out of your control, there's nothing you can do about it other than just to be with yourself. So be with yourself. Let yourself feel uncomfortable. Let that anxiety perk up a little bit. You might feel it in your stomach. You might feel it in your chest. You might feel it in your legs. You might feel it in your hands. Your heart might race a little bit. It's uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. Just let it be. Just let it be. And when those thoughts come up, you're going to say, I'm not going down that rabbit hole again. I know that trick. I know that my brain's just trying to trick me. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm just going to be a little uncomfortable. We're not good at being uncomfortable. And we're also not very good at being quiet. Anytime we get a moment of silence, our mind the gears start turning again. And we don't know what to do. One thing is to focus on your feelings, your emotions. Let them be. Get yourself comfortable with them. Don't fight it. Don't run away from it. Don't try to escape it. Just exist. And then what you might find is, as the anxiety starts to come, but you don't focus too much on the thought, then the thing that you're afraid of starts to fade away a little bit. And then the anxiety will slowly start to fade away a little bit because it has nothing to attach itself to. The anxiety is attached to the thought, which is the fear. But we're not going to give the thought and the fear any credence. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're not going to try to think about solutions. We're not going to try to think about what we can do. We're just going to let it be. Let the feeling come, and then eventually the feeling will pass. And then when that feeling passes, now we have to sit with true silence again. Silence that is silence of our thought and silence of our emotion, because now we're starting to feel calm. And what's going to happen? Our brain is going to go back to the thought because that's what it's used to. It's a bad habit, right? When we're in silence, we like to go to our thoughts, or we like to go to our phone, or we like to go to a screen, or we like to distract. Instead, hey, you've got 5 senses here, right? You've got your sound, you've got your vision, you've got your touch, you've got your smell, you got your taste. How about focus on one of those for a minute? What's more present than focusing on the very things that are sensing what is in your present moment? So take a moment and just listen. You might be in a quiet room, but I'm sure you'll be able to hear something. Some kind of humming, some kind of buzzing. Take a minute to look around the room and look at things. Especially if we're in our own house or we're in a common area that we usually are in, our brain is processing things unconsciously, so we don't really have to look. We kind of know where things are. We're kind of on robot mode. But let's take a minute and actually look at things in the room. Describe them to yourselves. Appreciate the color. Appreciate what is around you. Appreciate what you have. You can do this with all of your senses. You can do this with touch. Feel what's going on around you. Bring yourself back to reality, right? Because you're not in reality. You're in fantasy land. It's bad fantasy. It's nightmare fantasy, but it's in fantasy. You're thinking about the future. You're thinking about what's to come. What about right now? You got to bring it back to right now. So we are switching our tunnels from take a minute. Let yourself feel stressed. Don't try to solve the problem, because then you get good. But the other thing you get good at is you get good at realizing you don't have to solve all your problems and that you can't solve all your problems. And then you get comfortable with the unknown. That's how you get comfortable with the unknown, because a lot of our anxiety is about the unknown, right? The unknown of the future. What's going to happen? We have to get comfortable with the unknown. So we have to let ourselves relax and be and just exist and let the external forces that are out of our control just let them do their thing. There's nothing we can do about it. But we have to practice sitting with ourselves. This is a practice, because our whole life we've practiced the total opposite of that. We've practiced evaluating, judging, analyzing, trying to find solutions, and that has gotten you nowhere. So let's try a different practice. Let's practice being. Let's practice sitting. Let's practice existing. And instead of being in your thoughts, be in your body, be in your world around you. I hope you found this episode helpful. Please let me know what else you'd like me to cover, and I'll see you soon.